told me she can do it in less than 5 minutes. She already feels guilty, so I'm gonna make sure that it's in 5 minutes. You haven't turned this on yet, have you? Oh, are we on right now?
You want?
All right, good afternoon, corporations. Welcome back to another exciting Monday meeting. We do have 3 bills in front of us today. If you're watching online, we actually are going to take Senate File 75 first, then go to Senate File 49, and end up with water and sewer districts of 74. I'm slightly stalling because we're missing 1 member, but we will call the roll and I'll excuse him. Go ahead, please, Barb.
Representative Blackburn,
Excused.
okay. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air. Representative Burt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Representative LeBeau. Chairman Swanitzer.
Here.
Thank you.
First up today, we'll do Senate File 75, deferred annuities, minimum non-forfeiture. Welcome, Ms. Lee. And if you would let Mr. Ryan in, I believe he's online. And maybe anybody else who raises their hand, you could just throw them in as well at this point. With that, welcome, Kristen, to corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, and I really appreciate the accommodation to addressing Senate File 75 first. My client is under a deadline to get to an airport, and so Mr. Vince Ryan is the legislative director of American Council of Life Insurers in Washington, D.C., and is my client, and it's really best if we go to him right now.
Right now. No
Because-
questions from
yeah.
Ms. Lee while I have her in front of us? Seeing not, Mr. Ryan, welcome to corporations. Sorry you're not here in person this time. It's the nicest weather day we've had in 2 weeks. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Zwanitzer. I would much rather be in Wyoming today. I was hoping to be out there, but due to previous scheduling conflict, I'm going to have to appear virtually today. But thanks for accommodating me and for the time at today's committee meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as you'll recall, back in December, we considered a draft bill, then draft 165, that would enact some technical changes based on recent model law changes at the NAIC level, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, to adjust a interest rate change with respect to individual deferred annuities. Senate File 75 before you today would amend Wyoming law to conform with a technical amendment that was approved by the NAIC. The Wyoming Division of Insurance participated in that process that approved the model law amendment. As it currently stands, we have just a little over 20 states that have adopted this change, and we expect the overwhelming majority of the states to enact this amendment this year. Just a refresher on the background, an individual deferred annuity is an annuity that's designed for a long-term savings, wherein payments to a consumer are delayed until a date or time certain. So that date or time could be a retirement date, it could be a certain age. And within those contracts for this specific annuity that this law would apply to, they provide the annuity owner with what is considered a guaranteed minimum value if the annuity owner were to stop making payments before the end of their payment term. So prior to the annuity or the contract reaching its full maturity, if you will. And this is what we refer to as the non-forfeiture amount. The bill before you today would lower the minimum guaranteed interest rate used for calculating that amount from 1% to 15 basis points or 0.15. And when I say lower that interest rate, what I really mean is it establishes a new floor based on recent economic scenarios in history. This change is needed due to the ultra low interest rate environment that was brought about by the economic downturn stemming from the COVID pandemic. And while there's been some talk at the Fed level with respect to raising interest rates, the insurance regulatory community during COVID kind of discovered that their statutory framework that was in place wasn't adequate enough to address the unprecedented low interest rate environment. And that's why they developed this model law amendment. So in 2020, the yields for the US 5-year and 10-year treasuries were as low as 0.19 and 0.52%, which is much lower than that that minimum 1% that's currently in law. So given the economic downturn, it was not possible for a lot of our companies to support the current minimum rate that was, given those low interest rates. And this bill would allow our companies greater flexibility to adapt our products to the interest rate environment at the time. Should we see another low interest rate environment, and will of course help promote expanded product availability. I do want to mention on the record that this would only impact newly issued annuity contracts and would not impact annuities that have already been issued. And that's just simply because of contract law. Also, under the current law, and if this bill were to be enacted, the minimum guaranteed interest rate used by companies in their annuities contracts would continue to be based on a specific calculation that's set in statute and that allows interest rates as high as 3%. And all of that's basically to say that if interest rates were to increase in the future, then the annuitant or the consumers of these products would receive that higher rate. The change in this bill is only intended to address extreme drops in interest rates, such as what we faced during COVID. And so I guess if I were to sum up, this law would establish a new floor and it would dictate a floor, but the market would really dictate the ceiling and the actual rate. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there. Wanted to thank you again for the time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from Mr. Ryan? Not seeing any right now. And just for members of the audience, our copy machine didn't quite work right. So if we were looking a little frazzled up here, we were missing page 2 of the bill, but we found it. All right, seeing no further questions, Mr. Ryan, thank you very much for appearing virtually, Vince, and we'll find another bill to get you out here sometime soon.
Please do.
Other public comment online?
Thank you.
Miss Lee, hey, before you go, I noticed 5 of our friends in the Senate voted no on this. I just question if, were there any concerns raised on the floor over there that you heard, or I'm not sure why anybody would be against it. So I just thought I would check with you. Not that I want you to present the other side, but any major concern, or why would 5 people vote no?
Mr. Chairman, the concern was the raising interest rates, that the Fed has announced that they're going to raise interest rates. And so we're not in the completely low interest rate environment that we were during the pandemic. But I would say to that, it's a contract. This is a contract negotiated between the consumer and the issuer. And those prices are the terms of the contract are negotiated freely in the market. And so, but when there's a statutory floor in case the purchaser of the contract decides to stop making payments on that annuity. And then, so it's a free market contract. I think from an industry perspective, when there is a floor set in statute, they're asking to lower it. Now it's still a competitive product and it still goes up, but that's a mandatory statutory floor. Thank you.
All right, further questions, Ms. Lee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Insurance Commissioner, come on down. Welcome. Thoughts on Senate File 75?
Just very briefly, Mr. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Jeff Rue, the Insurance Commissioner, committee members. We're neutral on the bill. We have no concerns with it. We've seen it in other states. As said, it is a floor, not a ceiling. And if things change, the market someone might want to garner more market share and they might increase it on their own and promote that. But we've seen this in I think they said 20 other states. And going back to your question, Mr. Chairman, yes, the concern was we probably should have maybe done this a year or 2 ago with the rates, but nobody foresaw what was out there. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So better late than never, huh? Questions committee for the Insurance Commissioner? Seeing none, thank you much. Any other public comment on the bill before us? No one's here for this one. All right, seeing no further public comment on Senate File 75, we'll close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by Duncan, seconded by Air. Any amendments, committee? Discussion? Want to go lower than 15/100th of 1%? Seeing none and question being called. Barb, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 75.
Representative Blackburn,
Excuse.
Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air,
Aye.
Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Swanitzer.
Aye.
7 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
All right, committee, anybody want to manage this one on the floor? Evan, is that yes, Representative LeBeau? You're just smiling at me. I can give it to Roscoe if you'd like. You got it? Okay. We'll all back you up if you need it. And I'm sure Ms. Lee will meet with you on talking points, et cetera, if you need some. Okay, Senate File 75. It's done. Let's move on to, and thank you, Mr. Ryan, again for being here. You're welcome to stay and watch if you'd like. But we're going to go on to Senate File 49, repeal of specified state boards and commissions. Did we get anybody from management audit here today? Isn't that nice? I know the governor's office is here, but I hate to make them present the bill. And it's not an interim committee bill that we've looked at. Anybody feel like they really want to present the bill, Ms. Anderson? On behalf of the Management Audit Committee of the Legislature, we would certainly invite you to speak. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Betsy Anderson, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Governor Gordon. Since we asked for this interim topic, the governor's office did. I'm happy to walk you through the bill. I would, if it's okay, give just a little bit of history. It seems to be a little bit of an arbitrary bill with kind of these unconnected boards that we're looking at terminating. The genesis of this was the Alvarez and Marcel study that came out right before Governor Gordon took office. So it came out in November of 2018. It was an efficiency study that the legislature commissioned. And I don't know how many of you can remember that far back, but the study did have a couple of pages on efficiencies for boards and commissions. And on those pages, what they basically did was what I would say is an oversimplification of how we could consolidate boards and commissions. And they basically put all the education boards and said we could have one education board. And they put all the licensing boards together and said we could have a licensing board. They put Judicial Nominating Commission and the Commission on Judicial Ethics and Conduct in one board. Well, they're both constitutionally created, so that would be a heavy lift. So, but we did look at that. And so our office, the governor's office did. And so what we did was we kind of divided it, and the licensing boards, again, having doctors decide about architects, doesn't really make sense. But I do think there's some potential for some efficiencies of staffing that may be possible. And so the Department of A&I is looking at that particular matter. The governor's office took on the non-licensing boards. And what we did was a survey, and we surveyed all the administrators for all the non-licensing boards, and we asked for them to get back to us for any type of efficiencies, whether it was the board was needed anymore, whether they could have fewer members that would create some efficiencies, whether boards could be combined, just different ideas for efficiencies. And we came back with several responses and several recommendations. We did ask for an interim study, and the Management Audit Committee is the one that conducted that. And they ended up with this particular bill, which basically originally terminated, Senate made one change, Senate corporations, which I can go over, but terminated 6 boards. Those boards are the State Employee Compensation Commission, the Health Benefits Plan Committee, the Advisory Council on Palliative Care, the Governor's Food Safety Council, the Wyoming Public Television, and then the one that Senate changed slightly was the Advisory Committee on Underground Water. I'm happy to walk you through the bill. The main part of the bill is the repealer, which repeals most of the sections creating those boards. And then the bulk of the bill is really to clean up any references to those particular councils or any references to those statutes that created these particular boards and commissions and councils. The one change the Senate made was on the Advisory Committee on Underground Water. Instead of removing that board, they put it back in. Instead of shall, put may at the discretion of the Board of Control. And that was their one change. So I do have information on all 6 of these boards and the rationale and reasoning for why these boards really are not necessary any longer. And there are definitely people here from the various agencies that can speak to their boards if you want any particular information about those. And in your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to walk through all 6 of those boards if you'd like.
And so committee, think about if anybody wants specific direction on any one of those 6. I think 4 of them I can count from who I know are here to talk, or at least here to discuss if you have specific questions. Maybe one that is probably more fair to ask you, and I'm not trying to, breach executive privilege, but on any of these, did the agency or board or the directors of those entities come to you and say, we really would not be comfortable with you getting rid of this board? I understand this is a legislative prerogative to do so, but if there are any that, the executive branch feels slightly uncomfortable with us taking out, certainly be pleased to hear from the chief executive's office instead of them coming, because then it creates some issues. So,
Mr. Chairman, these were all recommendations from the directors and the agencies, the directors of these boards and commissions, and some of these boards are administered by a state agency. So it came from the director of that agency. There were more recommendations than are represented in this bill. And so there are some that either our office thought, oh, we don't think we're there yet. There's some that I think the legislature thought that they weren't there yet. So this is kind of the common denominator of what everybody agreed on.
okay, let's start with Representative McGuire, and we'll go to Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this may not be something that you were part of, but I'm curious, the last page of the bill, the fiscal note, which typically LSO goes in, they try and give us a good estimate. I'm just surprised that doing away with per diem and travel and some other things, you would think that there would be some kind of a positive fiscal impact. So if you know, thank you.
Ms. Anderson, if you know.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I don't have that information. I do think the concept of most of these board members are not paid, so there's no salary savings, but certainly travel and per diems and those types of dollars. These responsibilities are either not necessary or an agency is taking them over, so they are already state employees. I know for the Wyoming Public Television, the Wyoming Community College Commission actually works with the Wyoming Public Television. It's on their it's a standing item on their agenda. And so I think all these duties are really absorbed by current employees and current other boards and commissions. But I don't have the dollar amount on savings for travel.
Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, sorry, I got to switch mics. Let's try this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is the Wyoming Public Television Council. What do they do and why are they no longer relevant? Why are they being cut from this program?
Ms. Anderson, if you wanted, if not, there are people in the back who would love to talk. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I will, if Director Caldwell wants to come up, she can give you more precise information on that, but they're not going away. It's just kind of different dynamics of their duties and responsibilities.
And we're still spending $752 according to the fiscal note on them. I've never seen a $700 fiscal note, but Ms. Caldwell, welcome. Director the Wyoming Community College Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Sandy Caldwell, Executive Director of the Wyoming Community College Commission for the state of Wyoming. Representative Duncan, I think I can answer that question for you. We did submit this a council for, it's an advisory council, and we did submit this council for being repealed. I did work very closely with the general manager of Wyoming Public TV. That's Mr. Terry Dugas. He is watching us right now on YouTube. What I can tell you is this particular council was put in place in 2003 when the media landscape was very different. In fact, it was the de facto video production for much of the state government, and that really isn't necessary any longer. They delivered the closed circuit TV classes. They did all kinds of things in which the advisory council made sense at the time. It just really doesn't function any longer. In fact, Mr. Dugas is frequently trying to track down to make sure that we can even seat that council. What I can also tell you in terms of fiscal impact, the funds for that council have not been used. I think it was a holding place of 1,000, which has been reverted over the years. It's just not been necessary to use. And we do have a standing item, as you heard our deputy chief just mention. We have that as a regular item on the Community College Commission meetings. And then, of course, Central Wyoming College is actually the fiscal agent. And so those funds come through the commission to Central Wyoming College for the dissemination to Wyoming Public TV. So this is a board that at one time, advisory council that at one time made sense and really doesn't have a functional purpose any longer.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably a general question for you, Ms. Anderson. Are most of these members of these councils or boards, are they state employees?
Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, no, they're not. There are sometimes when on the boards, they actually designate a state employee, but most of these people are not state employees. Having said that, one thing I did want to point out, and I do think it's true for Wyoming Public Television and most of these boards, they have a hard time finding people to serve. And, you know, you have some boards, I know the Food Safety Council, a lot of these are industry reps, and they have an employee. That employee leaves that particular company or that industry, and then they can't get anybody to come in. And so one of the issues and the common issues that were presented by all of these boards is just the ability to find people to serve.
Follow up. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that most volunteer boards and commissions receive the same compensation as legislators do. Is that not true?
Go ahead, Ms.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ayer, they do get travel and per diem. It is there are very few that get I do think the Board of Education is one. I do think they're paid some type of payment beyond travel and per diem. I don't think it's very much, but that's rare. Most boards, they are all doing this on a volunteer basis, and they do not get compensated outside of reimbursement.
Any other questions regarding the Community College Commission, Wyoming Public Television specifically? Will I have Director Caldwell? Okay, seeing none. Thanks, Sandy. Anything else, Ms. Anderson? I know you're not going to go too far, but
I'll stay here.
okay. Committee, any more questions? Anybody online for this one? So I know there are some representative agencies around here. I don't expect you're here to fight for your commissions, but if any of you do want to come up at this time, I assume you're all just here for questions. Should we have any? Everyone's just nodding. Nobody wants to be on the camera. Okay. Committee, do you have any specific questions on any of the 6 entities we're discussing? I remember, so I've been here long enough, and a couple of these came into effect. They were a big deal on the Palliative Care Council. Even when we had the State Employee Compensation Commission, that was a big thing here 10 years ago, and yeah, just didn't work well. We had the Hayes study, right? And so now we just need to set a MPP that we hold to. Would be nice if we could fund that. Anybody on the committee? Any questions on any of these? What they do? Why they were important at the time? Some of the Food Safety Council over the years was exciting. Those of you who missed the raw milk debates of 2008, 9, and 10. A couple of us were here. Those were the good days. Okay, any other public comment on this bill at all? Oh, Mr. Moline brought up raw milk and the Farm Bureau said, yep, we should talk about food safety. And well, we had a lot of Food Safety Council things with food freedom over the last 10 years as well. Welcome, Mr. Moline.
Thank you, Mr. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Committee. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, feeling it's important to speak on this. As many times as my organization has talked about being against the expansion of government when you have chances to decrease it in whatever way you can, feel that's important to support. I did warn the good chairman that Farm Bureau was going to be a support of a bill in front of your committee. Just a little bit on the Groundwater Advisory Board. I was part of the reason that they changed that from a shall to a may. Concerns that in the future, we may have some instances where we need a citizen advisory board on groundwater. As an example, there's some potential projects up in the Niobrara, Converse County area that some citizen involvement might be important, but to change that from a shall to a may would allow the state engineer to use that when it's needed. When it's not needed, we don't have to have the board. Just a little bit of how that came about as an amendment on the Senate. And with that, Mr. Chairman, sitting in support of this bill, I would sit for any questions you or the committee may have for me.
For those of you who've never been on revenue, Mr. Molina is a frequent flyer who's not always excited about any revenue. His members are not excited about revenue generating bills.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I may add, the
Sure.
one suggestion that I've brought forward has been killed the last 3 times upon introduction. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, I digress a tiny bit.
Seeing no further questions, Mr. Molina, the Farm Bureau. Seeing none. All right, thank you. No further public comment. All the state agencies just enjoyed spending a lunch hour with us. Okay, certainly you're welcome anytime you want to come back. Seeing no further public comment on Senate File 49, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Representative LeBeau, seconded by Representative Roscoe. Okay. Any deletions, discussion, amendments? Find a couple other boards and commissions to throw in here. Not a commission.
I tried.
All right, seeing no discussion. No amendments.
Question.
Okay, question being called. Barbara, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 49.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air.
Aye.
Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Aye.
8 ayes, 1 excused.
All right. So Representative Byrd, I would probably put this under your name for the time being, but there might be somebody from management audit who does want it. So, but if not, I thought the Libertarian Party was like a good reduced government kind of bill. So I'll talk to management audit. None of them want to take it. I will help you on the floor, anything you need. And I'm certain everyone's going to stay to talk about water and sewer districts or not. I guess we'll give it a minute to clear the room. Good seeing you, Ms. Oswald. Some of my favorite constituents are here and didn't want to testify, so. Ms. Caldwell, have a good day. All right, everybody else. Director, you're going to stay, talk about water and sewer districts. I'm excited. All right, so water and sewer district election amendment, Senate File 74 was an interim committee bill. You'll remember it was a attempted bill, Senate File 75, House Bill 75 last year. This committee dealt with and moved through 4 meetings, became an interim study. It ultimately became a committee bill based on Senator Scott doing a kind of a specific fix for large sewer and water districts. And I think last I knew it only affected 2 in the state. Representative Sweeney, are you here to present the bill on behalf of the Corporations Committee? Again, committee, if I can do a quick explanation. This dealt with a sewer and water district in the middle of the state, and Representative Sweeney's district or just outside that was historically established as a sewer water district. And we had 2 different municipalities over time annex and grow over the top of that sewer and water district. And then we had some differences of opinion between the water district, the county commissioners, those cities on who exactly was in control of water and the rates especially. And so ultimately Senator Scott came with a bill that said if it's a district that provides, as you see in front of you, 750 or more taps. And last I knew that only applied to one in the Trona County and one in Laramie County in my district, that you do have to have a different election process that you can see in the bill. I think the concern was they only had 11 or 14 votes in the entire district for that board that oversees multiple millions of dollars in water funds. And there are some people who are unhappy with that election process. So that's a bill in front of you, and Representative Sweeney came to the table to express his support, I suppose. And so Representative Sweeney, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, on the Senate side, there was discussion on the number of taps because originally Senator Scott and this good committee had put in 1,000 taps. And so there was discussion on the floor. Somebody moved to take it down to 500, and Senator Scott put it back at in between at 750. So our county clerk had indicated to me last week when they met that she was hearing some other conversations from clerks around the state that maybe it involved more water and sewer districts, more than the 2 at 1,000. But I did not hear back from my county clerk if there was further concern. It specifically does say taps, so it can't be construed for like a fire district or a cemetery district, or it's very specific to water and sewer. So with that, I do believe that it's possible that a friendly amendment might take it back up to 1,000 if the committee so wished, but I'm fine at leaving it at 750, but if the committee so saw it. But
So I guess Representative Sweeney, let me ask, and I guess it's your opinion, do you think this solves the problem? I mean, and so in my mind, the ultimate problem was you had 2 different governmental entities, both having some claim over the water, regardless if it was in the municipality or if it wasn't, on who ultimately controlled within their jurisdictions. The approach by Senator Scott, I mean, I think is a small fix for your specific situation on the election. And I don't want to put words in your mouth or Senator Scott's, but there's a belief that if you have a larger election component to who's on the board, you may have different board members who will enact different policies. So I guess my question is, do you think this actually solves the greater governmental issue, or is this kind of a Band-Aid stopgap for one specific problem that your county experienced?
so thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. So I don't necessarily know if it fixes 100% of the problem. It does tend to bring more clarity to this size of a water district, and hopefully get more people interested in putting it on the ballot versus the way it's been happening. So the other issue, if you remember, was basically who has the ability, because there's not real strong language in statute on these particular kinds of water districts. And bar none is almost 70% of the amount of taps in this particular case. And this particular water district has become very punitive against bar none because of different issues and their residents. So the question was, there's really not a good dissolution mechanism. And this doesn't really apply to that. But the Attorney General's latest opinion a couple of months ago added better clarity on petition mechanism. And so basically our county commissioners rejected bar none's petition because it had gone on for over a year, waiting and going back and forth. And so I do believe bar none will put another petition out and here shortly and attempt again to get clarity. But this bill, Senator Scott and myself felt that this was needed in order to bring some clarity as far as elections of the board. So,
And so just to be fair, the sewer and water district doesn't feel they're being punitive to bar none, from what I understand. I know the mayor of that community feels differently, and that's part of the issue. So just wanted to be fair to all sides if there's a legal proceeding. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I asked this question when we met in the interim and discussed this bill, but it would seem to me if there was a real problem with this water district, if consumers were not satisfied, if there were problems between the city and the municipality and the water district, you'd get more than 15 people out of the 1,000 taps to participate in an election. I mean, as they knew when the election was shortly.
Representative Sweeney, if you want to comment, but as the bill does dictate, it would be now at a general election.
Right.
And we did hear from people that it was an interesting time of year to have an election and maybe perhaps not well notified. So this would say over 750 taps, it would have to be at a general election and people would be more aware of the people running for that water and sewer board. Would that be a fair statement, Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Ayer. Yes, that basically the hope is and the belief is that this will add some transparency and to the consumers and hopefully generate, my hope is that it generate more interest in the board. But as you all know, in this time of, I would say hate and discontent, it's really getting harder and harder to get anybody to run, for any of these type of boards. And I think it's going to be harder and harder to find volunteers to step up. And I think Senator Scott and myself are both hopeful that by bringing these larger water districts, which at 1,000 taps, I believe the chairman's absolutely correct. It was 2. But that was the hope is bring more transparency and bring more awareness, because the notifications, just as you had heard testimony, it went out by registered mail or certified mail on notifications. And I don't live in that water and sewer district, but those, including the mayor, never has received any sort of certified mail on an election or a vacancy. So.
Right. For the questions, Representative Sweeney. Seeing none. Thank you for being here. And I have anything? Libertarians, county clerks, come on down. Anybody online? Okay. Welcome, Ms. Langford. Any thoughts you want to share on Senate File 74, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor of representing the county clerks of the state of Wyoming. And my purpose today is to focus on the administration of Wyoming elections, and particularly this proposed water and sewer district election amendments. The clerks have had the opportunity to review the proposed legislation and have some concerns. This type of a district is classified as a special district. It falls under Chapter 29, and it has a procedure for how its election can be conducted. And I have listened to, I've been to the interim meetings and I've listened to the discussion, and there's great concern about how this particular district's elections have been conducted. And from what I've heard, not what the statute requires. Certified mail and those types of things are not things that are in the statute for special districts. And I do believe the solution that seemed to be most popular would be for it to go to a general election ballot. And there's a lot of complicators with that. One being the general election ballot as we know it, that has all of the state offices and all of your folks on there. Those are voters that are voting in those elections. And in this election, to me, it sounded like we were just going to plug it in on the general election ballot and we would vote it there. But these people are tap owners. They're not necessarily voters. And so determining who votes, they're tap owners. They're not voters. And so their access to the general election ballot isn't appropriate. It's not generated through WildReg. It would be generated by that district to say that this is our district. And those districts may not even be adjacent. They're the folks that are in those taps may not be adjacent to each other. It's possible that you could have a subdivision in there that didn't have everyone in the subdivision as a tap owner. It's really complicated, and that's part of the reason why I believe that it's a special district. But I also understand and I totally appreciate the issues that these folks have had, is that they can't get people to do their elections. And there are a lot of assets, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of things involved. And they have 8 or 10 people voting in their election when it should be over 1,000 or more. So that's one of the concerns. Another concern that we have is that on page 2 of the bill, well, to back up just a smidge, when you read Title 41, there's definitions of water, of sewer, and water and sewer. And on page 2, if you look at line 12, it says beginning January 1, 2024, any district providing services. So we're talking about a water and sewer district here. We're not talking about any district. So does that include the water districts that would have taps? Does it include the sewer districts that would have taps? Or is it just the water and sewer district, which is what appears to be what this is shooting for, is to get the water and sewer districts. The other part of that is that if it's everybody, we're talking like 45 districts out there or more. If we're talking specifically for the Natrona County situation, and possibly, and I don't know this for sure, and I haven't been able to get the information, is that include the South Cheyenne Water District, which does their elections, which has no problems, and is a good guy as opposed to a bad actor. Those are several of the concerns. Like I said, I think everybody pictured this to be just another question on your general election ballot when you're voting for the courthouse and the governor and all of those folks, and it's not going to be that. It's going to be something else that will be over at another table. If it's in the special district and at a general election, if it's in the special district election statute, it can be done by mail ballot. It can also be done with a polling place. It can be done on a general election day. And the conduct of that election, I wonder, since it's in special districts, if the clerk has authority to be able to administer that election. And I think that was the intent when everybody talked about it. But I think we've got a lot of questions as far as how that works. Again, we understand the problem. We understand the frustration. I wished I could come to you with a great solution for this. I don't have a great solution for you. I just want to tell you the complicators and the concerns. And I believe, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else. And I'm happy to try to answer questions.
Good luck. Representative McGuire.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you really stole my thunder. I was going to ask you if you were familiar with the Supreme Court case that said one tap, one vote. But you pretty well laid it out, and I agree with you completely that putting this on the general ballot allows people who have no interest to vote. And so I think that is a real problem. I do have a second question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. If we do go forward with this, I would recommend your thoughts on some kind of a language on page 3 when it talks about the expiration of the term insofar as following something like we have for the general direction where it's general elections, where it's the first Tuesday of the January following the election that all the offices change. It seems like to me like we should have a specific date in there as opposed to just they will change. But that would be if this goes forward. I would invite you to weigh in on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Ms. Langford, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I would agree with that. You need a hard and fast date for that.
So I guess my most important question is, did you discuss these concerns with the other body down the hall? I mean, didn't seem to think these were as concerning concerns as I'm seeing red flags all over the place now. Did you bring these concerns to the Senate?
We did not. And part of that is that at that point in time, our body met last week. Our clerks met last week. And this bill was already well down the road at that point in time when concerns came up from some of the other counties and said, geez, we have fully functioning special districts. And again, I think that the big question came down to this page 2, any district, who is that? Because then it becomes smaller if it's specific to water and sewer.
So if you wouldn't have to create a new precinct if we were to do this, you would just have a separate table and a sign that says, if you're a member and can prove you're a member of the water and sewer district, please come here and vote for election. Or how would this function on election day and for absentees?
Mr. Chairman, exactly. Special District Election Act requires that they issue absentees for their elections. They go through pretty much the same procedure that we're used to with a general election. But I think you're right. I thought at the time we were talking about this, we're talking about a small election. And it's going to be a larger election than that, but it could be a table at the day, or it could be a mail ballot election. However, you've got mail ballots coming in, you've got absentees coming in, they're all flying into the clerk's office. And then now that becomes a little bit confusing.
And I think Representative McGuire may have hit it on the head. Is it really one tap, one vote, or is it 4 people in a household? Do they all get a vote? I don't know how special districts work now. Is everybody using that tap, or does one person in said household or whatever the tap is being used for, let's say it's a business, get a vote?
Mr. Chairman, I have no idea.
President Clausen.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Langford, on page 2, line 12, if we would, just one fix to one of your problems or suggestion, if we went to, where it says providing and just clarified that it was water services to 750, would that clear up the other special district issues, or does that not solve that one small piece of this?
Langford, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, which line did you say? Representative Clausen?
Page 2, line 12, after providing.
Okay,
And I think he asked about water districts, but I think the two in question are water and sewer districts as defined by our statute. But would that solve, that would help the problem?
yeah.
Or we could say water, comma, sewer, comma, and water and sewer. But that might be, I'm not exactly sure how many water districts have 750 taps. I don't see the PSC in here today either. So they must not be concerned. This was an interim bill, right?
It was,
So
Mr. Chairman.
we just all seem to have missed it in November meeting. We had redistricting in our minds. Representative
Chairman.
LeBeau is like, I've never seen this. I was gone before this came out.
Mr. Chairman, I
Isn't that-
think it was one of those that we rushed through at the very last minute because we kept pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off.
I remember the issue, and then Senator Scott brought this is a solve for this specific problem. And now I'm hearing the clerk saying, we're not sure how to administer something in this regard.
Mr. Chairman, I think we could figure out how to administer it, but we're just concerned how far reaching it is. Because from what it looks like here, without some sort of an amendment on page 2, we're going to include a whole bunch of water and sewer districts. If we can draw it down to and I think what the intent also was, and the understanding probably is we were fixing one specific problem. And this is a little further reaching than that. Maybe there's some way to exempt out the good guys and leave the bad guys in. I don't know. I am,
Well,
I'm really sorry. We've kind of bungled this.
Well, I mean, 4110-112 is the water and sewer district law, so it probably would only apply to water and sewer districts. When it says any district providing services, I think it's contained into 4110, which is specific to water and sewer districts. So I'm not as concerned about that as I am who gets to vote, how many votes, how do you clarify when it's a tap? But I don't know how do you do that right now with, let's say, a fire district? Is it one household gets a vote in a fire district, or is it everybody over 18 in other special districts?
So it's, Mr. Chairman, the voters. And then it would be the property owners. So if it's Dave and Mary Langford both get to vote. If it's the Langford Family Trust, then somebody has to decide who that is for the property ownership. A lot of special districts are tied to land ownership as opposed to voting. If you're in a improvement and service district, you don't have to be a registered voter in Wyoming. You have to be a property owner. So every district has a different definition of how that works.
But it's based on the title of the deed primarily then.
And would probably, and I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how they determine who owns the tap. You know, does Dave own the tap or does Mary own the tap?
I mean, I know at my household, but maybe not at everybody else. I don't do dishes very often. It's a nice thing about marriage. President Duncan.
Mr. Chairman, so that complicates it even further, because then
Who are the
what if it's a
voters?
renter? Do they get to vote? Or is it only the property owner gets to vote? So I'm even more confused now.
President Clausen.
Mr. Chairman, do we know that it is one tap, one vote, or is it spelled out somewhere how, it's got to be spelled out how these are voted on now, and we just can follow that?
How would it be now in a water sewer district ballot election, Ms. Langford?
Mr. Chairman, and again, I haven't read the very first part of 4110. I think it would define who are the voters, you know? But I believe it ties right to the tap. Mhm.
Go ahead, Ms. LaBelle.
So did, I think it's to the committee, because I wasn't participating, I was gone, but, so did I hear correctly that this was an interim study? We studied it?
So Representative LeBeau, you'll remember there was a certain water and sewer district in the middle of the state. Representative Sweeney and others had brought a bill that was not agreeable between the county commissioners and the municipalities. We kind of pushed it around all last session, made it an interim study, decided that we didn't necessarily want to solve the issue legislatively because court action had commenced and they had asked for Attorney General's opinions, and there's a whole lot of moving and shaking in this county. But to help at the time, kind of move the ball down the field and maybe solve not the entire issue, but legislatively the statutory problem we had with a municipality and a water district overlapping on who controlled voting. That's where the bill came from. And so I think in mid-year, we were still kind of talking about the litigious issue, and then this was a solution that came at our later meeting that turned into a committee bill. Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first is kind of a statement, but I would couch it as a question, and that is with regard to the district that's in question and is causing all the issue in the central part of the state. Part of it is they're just avoiding spending the money to do this. They could do their own mail-in ballot, but they don't. They put a little box outside of the building, and that's where people are supposed to put their votes. And then, oh, surprise, there's only 6 or 7 votes. Huh? Isn't that surprising? So I would just say that if we're going to move forward with this, Mr. Chairman, maybe there's a question of financial responsibility. The other part, and just to remind the members of the committee here, so the problem was that there was another statute 22-29-307, which was sunsetted. The county commissioners have the authority to remove property from a special district. And then after that sunsetted, then there was just this question, and the county commissioners were reluctant to move forward. I think that they still have the authority to do so if they want to. I think this whole thing is moot myself. And if you recall, I asked for the Attorney General to issue a letter ruling, and in fact, to come to our next meeting, which they failed to do. And so now we're with this, and honestly, I think we're kind of going down the wrong direction. I think that the AG should read the statute and let us know if there's a problem or not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a question. Wouldn't you agree?
Ms. Langford.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I believe that there's probably a better way to go about this. And I think I agree with you, sir, that changing their election process, and it may maybe work for a little while, then you get a good board in place that will do what they're supposed to do according to the statute. And then you've got something that's on the books that it's really not necessary anymore, is another thing.
Further questions, Ms. Langford? Seeing none. Yep. Representative Aaron, go
Might
ahead.
make a comment, and maybe I can fashion a question somewhere in this. I just want to comment that we have another model that works very well in our state with the rural electric cooperatives. They're not governed by statute, but they are similar to a water and sewer district. They provide a service. They conduct elections. They have good participation. They notify every customer. And the way they do it is one vote for one connection. So if you have 2 people in the house, you have to decide who's going to vote that. And they don't burden the county clerk with any part of their elections. They just handle it themselves and internally. And if there's a problem, the customers can get together and band together and turn over a board member and decide, make changes to make it work better. So I think with all these problems that we've now come to understand with having it this time as a general election, that I agree with Representative McGuire, I think we got a better solution on this more shortly. Wouldn't you agree?
Would you agree, Ms. Langford?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, sure.
Further questions for Ms. Langford before I get back to Sweeney? Seeing none, thanks, Mary. Representative Sweeney, another bite of the apple? Let me make sure there's no other public comment. Mr. Garrett? Any of the three people in the back row on their phones? Nope. Okay, go ahead, Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I really appreciate what the good county clerk brought up. And I think Senator Scott and my intention was just that, to try to get some better results on the election. I do believe, because in the petition process, it came out that it was, I believe, the tap owner. So if you have an apartment complex, they, I think in the petition, were getting, or renting a house, they were getting that renter. And I can see, obviously, the complication trying to put this on a general election ballot or even a table to the side, honestly doesn't solve the issue during a general election. I think it just complicates it.
The legislature has never been accused of, complicating the law. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Sweeney, explain to me again, do they have a board of directors that supposedly run all of this?
Representative Sweeney, if you know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. But it's been difficult to try to get information on when there's a vacancy and when their elections are actually, we think we know when their elections are, but, or I should say the town of Vernon.
Go ahead.
Follow it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So basically, we just have a neglectful board, and the people participating need to request transparency, and like Representative Ayer talked about, that several of the members can go and complain and make a change. So is that an option? Have they even tried that?
Oh, I feel like the mayors of two different municipalities have got the county commissioners, and there are complaints, and they have not been agreeable without some court action and some other dealings. And so in all fairness, we're hearing.
What about the
side.
people? The
And
people actually paying?
It's my understanding that there are people in both municipalities, but a large portion of this water and sewer district are actually industrial or commercial businesses, which is where some of the complaints are coming from as well, that they're not inside the municipalities, and it's the industrial area of Natrona County, quite honestly. But Representative Sweeney, if you want to elucidate on that, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the industrial properties have a complaint, but then you have developers that still own land. They don't dare complain to this particular district. Even though they want to, they wouldn't even testify in front of the committee for fear of retribution from this water district. So,
Anyway, it's been an ongoing issue for more than a year and a half, and there's not been a resolvement. And this is one piece of attempting to find a different way to maybe solve or to mitigate the issue as a statewide solution that would impact future growth and issues I think we're hearing today that it might need more work, but that, I mean, committee's discretion, obviously. Any more questions, Representative Sweeney? I know two of you are kind of new to this. The rest of us have had a enjoyable year talking about this particular sewer and water district. All right, seeing none, any further public comment online? Any further public comment? Nope, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on Senate File 74? Moved by McGuire, seconded by Clausen. Discussion or amendments? Representative Air.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suggest on page 2, line 13, we change the 750 to 1,000.
Is there a second? Back to 1,000. So page 2, line 13, and then that wording as well, Barb. Put it from 750 to 1,000. Or you could just write, take out the Senate amendment, whatever is easiest for you. Further discussion on that amendment, committee? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of that amendment, say aye. Opposed, say no. That amendment's passed. Back in the bill. For Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would be on page 2, line number 16. And it would go on, the election shall be held at the general election, comma, and I would say at the expense or at the cost of the water and sewer district.
Seconded by Duncan. Okay, is there any discussion on that? At the expense of the district? Water and sewer, and we're in that
Actually,
statute, so.
district, I'm sorry, district is probably because it is with it.
Yeah. Got that, Barb?
I have it.
On line 21, after general election, well, that actually might not be the best.
You said
You want it
on
on line
16?
20.
You want it on 16.
I'm open.
Yep.
You have a better.
Nope, that's at a general election. I think if you put it there on line 16 after the comma of election, at the expense of the district, and then you could tell LSO that if there's a better place on that statute to cite it, just say district. Discussion on amendment committee. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. That amendment is passed. Back on the bill. Further discussion or amendments. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did we want to address line 12 on page 2, the word any?
When I looked, it's still in 4110. It's the water and sewer district.
Okay.
So I think it's covered. I know I'd heard from my county clerk that there may be an issue there, but I think statutorily that's correct. Any other discussion on the bill committee? Further amendments? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I didn't run up and grab the code for the elections, but on page number 3, on line number 2, where it would say term shall expire, and I would recommend putting in the language that applies to all of us, that our term expires on the first Tuesday of the January following the election. And then strike the rest of the line. So it'd be page 3, line 2. Term shall expire, and then insert the same language that's in the election code for all elected officials.
Yes, I should ask Ms. Langford, or water sewer districts 2-year terms, do you know? Is that do you want it to be a 2-year term, Representative McGuire?
I think so. Honestly, what I'm hoping is that this will spur some kind of movement in one way or the other to get this problem solved. I imagine that they'll be back next year.
That term does not even say how often. So Barb, I think the amendment will be to establish on page 3, somewhere in that Romanet I paragraph between lines 2 and 5, that each term of office for a board of director shall be a 2-year term. And in conjunction with when all other terms start, it's like the first Monday of January. Yeah, the first Monday of January. And that's also in the election code. Representative Clausen.
To the amendment, so if we go section B, this or the expiration of the term is established by subsection B, and you go back to subsection B and it's district board shall serve a term of 4 years.
Oh,
Unless I'm reading it wrong, which could be very, very easy.
it does say board member shall serve a term of 4 years as provided in subsection D. And it doesn't quite say when they end.
Going back to page 2, the beginning of line I, so the office of any director whose term would otherwise expire in the general election year of that district's board elections.
So do we still need an amendment? Does that cover it? They have, I mean, the assumption is they would have to be reelected. And if nobody runs for office, then we don't really have a termination clause, I guess is also my worry. You still think you need your amendment then? Representative McGuire, I guess is my question.
I just think that we ought to have some kind of a date certain, somewhere in there, it should be a date certain so that they say, okay, you are out or you are in. You know, if they have a board meeting on a Wednesday, who's on the board and who's not.
So Barb, I think the amendment then is a general, and it can go in Romanet B on page 2, or it could go at the end of line 5 on page 3. That says a district board member, that the language is basically a district board member's term shall commence on the first Monday of January. And I would say in line with whatever statutory citation is currently in law that says that. I don't know where to find it off the top of my head, but I know that's when they all start.
And Mr. Chairman, will you be giving that to me?
I will find that after the meeting. Yep. And so committee, the amendment still is, it's a 4-year term starting on the first Monday of January, ending on the first Monday of January, 4 years later. And just clarifying that in law. And I'll give you the language. Representative Clausen.
They're staggered actually. Further on in section B.
They're still staggered, but they still will always start on January, the first Monday of January. So. And so. Term of 2 years, 3, yeah. So they're staggered and every general election, one general election, you'll get 3, and next one you'll get 2. Representative Bear, discussion on the amendment.
Yeah, I just think those are governed by the special district bylaws. And we're trying to apply a statewide solution to a local problem, I think. Better off left like it is and then kill the bill.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but on the amendment itself, for the time being, since the amendment's in front of us, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
That amendment is passed. We're back on the bill. Further discussion or amendments? Seeing no further discussion or amendments and question being called, Barb, if you would call the roll on Senate File 74.
Representative Blackburn. Excused. Representative Byrd. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air.
No.
Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer. 4, 1 excused.
All right, committee. I haven't signed the bill jacket yet, so if anybody wants to change their vote, certainly let me know before I go sign the paperwork. But otherwise, we'll hold that bill in committee, and if anything changes, in our next 2 more meetings scheduled, we can certainly have a revote on it, should any member of the committee wish, or if new information comes to light. With that, we did get 2 more bills this morning in introduction. It's my understanding we'll be getting at least 3 more, assuming they get to the Senate And so we only have Wednesday, Friday, and next Monday to get bills to this committee. It does sound like one will be an entire committee meeting and perhaps then some after, should that bill get referred to us. It may stay in the speaker's desk. I think it depends on dynamics. So be prepared for at least one very long meeting, maybe Wednesday. I'll try not to make it Friday. And if it's that long of a meeting next Monday, it seems we'd have to be done by noon to get it to the floor in time anyway. So I'll let you know, but definitely 2 bills up for Wednesday. They both were referred this morning, one center, another cot. So I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but at least we'll have some work for Wednesday at noon. Seeing no further business coming before the committee today, we go back into session in 23 minutes.